Welcome to Denali Events, a new public outreach platform hosted by Denali National Park and Preserve in interior Alaska. My name is Sierra McLean, and I'm the coordinator for the Muri Science and Learning Center in Denali. Thank you so much for joining us today. Through this new platform, we are bringing you 15-minute conversations with special guests this summer and beyond. The platform allows viewers from far away to interact with these guests and ask them questions, real time, right here, right now. Please, as you listen, post your questions to the live stream chat box or to the Facebook comment page for Denali National Park and Preserve. If you wish to watch with captions, we are hosting a simultaneous identical caption feed on the Denali Park website. If you miss an event, don't worry. These events are all archived on the live stream page as well as on the park website. Our special guest today is Dr. Tony Fiorillo. Tony is the Curator of Earth Science at the Perot Museum of Science and Nature in Dallas, Texas. Over the past 2 decades, Tony has earned recognition for his work in more than a dozen national park units across the country. He works extensively on Late Cretaceous vertebrate fauna across the globe, with a particular interest in polar Late Cretaceous communities and dinosaur paleoecology. Tony revels in both the intellectual and the environmental challenges of conducting fieldwork in Alaska. Tony, I understand you recently completed a particularly exciting month of fieldwork in Denali, and I look forward to hearing more about that in a few minutes. But first, I want you to start by telling us, why should people be excited about Alaskan dinosaurs?
Well, there's 2 parts to that question, and the first part would be, why should Alaskans be interested in Alaskan dinosaurs? And it's because people are inherently curious about what's immediately around them. So it is still a revelation for some people to understand that dinosaurs lived here in Alaska. As far as sort of the global view, it's they lived in Alaska at a time when Alaska was pretty close to the latitude it is now. So these are high latitude dinosaurs. And this is the best place on the planet to study that. And we're very interested in what that means in terms of it breaks all the stereotypes of dinosaurs living in tropical swamps, because that's not the case up here, as well as it's the work that my team is doing is showing that this was a thriving community of animals and plants. And so this ecosystem, it wasn't stark, it wasn't barren, it was very productive, very interesting, very biologically rich.
I understand that some of the knowledge that you have of Alaskan dinosaurs is really fairly new. And we'll talk about some other Alaskan parks shortly, but since we're in Denali, let's start here.
Okay.
My understanding is that the first evidence of dinosaurs was found in Denali just 1 decade ago, in 2005. And I'm wondering if you can tell us about that exciting moment. I don't believe you were there, but I know you know the story. And then if you can follow up with telling us about some of the exciting finds that you've had in the last 10 years here in Denali.
Sure. The first track was found by members of the team that I work with. So in some ways I wasn't there, you're right. I was actually getting ready to go to the North Slope, and he conveyed the story to me as follows. He was taking 2 graduate students with him, and they had just done a really long hike the day before, and they pretty much were at a point where they're going to revolt. It's like they didn't want another long hike. And so they drove down the park road looking for something that was basically roadside. And so they went out there, and he had a few points to talk about. He studies as we like to call it, he studies the mud between the toes of these dinosaurs, the fossil soils that tells us a lot about ecosystem and climate and so on. So he went to this outcrop with the 2 students and started to talk. And we were convinced, based on our first work that we would find dinosaur footprints with enough effort. And he relayed that to the students as he was talking about the rock, the aspects of the rock. And the students asked, and what would a footprint look like? And he described, 3 toes, so on and so on. And one of the students said, you mean like that thing right behind you? He was so focused on the rocks and what they would say that he missed the footprint. And so that's how the first footprint was found. And that footprint is on display here, as you know, at the Muir Science and Learning
Right.
Center.
And that was just for our audience, Dr. Paul McCarthy of University of Alaska, Fairbanks, is that?
Yes,
Is
it was Dr. McCarthy.
And his students, yeah.
Right, and he was a member of this year's team here in Denali as well.
Wonderful. That is so awesome that it was a graduate student who found the first footprint.
Yes.
So tell us now, what are a couple of your most exciting finds from Denali?
It's always the one that I've just made. And I would say in terms of magnitude, there's been so many of them. Sometimes we found footprints of things that we weren't expecting to find. For example, Denali is a great home for if you want to study fossil birds. It's one of the best places on the planet. And in terms of fossil bird diversity from one rock unit, this is the best place in the world. Not one of, but the best place. And so we were able to document that and find types of tracks that nobody had ever seen before. So we got to name a few types of fossil birds off of their tracks. And then another great moment was when we were doing some of the basic survey work in a remote part of the park and came across this incredible trackway. And what do I mean by that? It was about the size of a football field and had thousands and thousands of footprints on it. Mostly duck-billed dinosaurs, and it got even better because most of the tracks were so well preserved. They showed skin impressions, and they showed, when you looked at the tracks, there were mom, dad, big brother, big sister, and little babies. So it was a pretty exciting find.
Nice. I got to go there last year. It's an amazing place.
It is.
That trackway. I'm going to take a second and show our viewers a mural that was created over the last year and a half by science illustrator Karen Carr. This mural is the most accurate scientific depiction of the known fossils, dinosaur and plant fossils from Denali to date. Just to point out a few of the critters that Tony was just mentioning, the duck-billed dinosaurs are these hadrosaurs in the foreground. The bird diversity that he's describing is shown up here, of course, in the sky. And then the very first fossil that was found was from a theropod, and we have depicted here the Troodon as well as a Nanoxaurus, which I imagine Tony will tell us more about in a little while. So we'll be using this from time to time throughout the talk. It's available for viewing at the Muir Science and Learning Center. So I know of 2 individuals who are not scientists who have found new types of dinosaurs in Denali. One, it was a therizinosaur, right, and one, the ankylosaur, and these were both found by park educators. So I think it's really amazing that people who don't have a background in science like you do can go out and discover new things in Denali. So tell these people, if we have explorers out there who want to come to Denali, what should they be looking for when they come and look for dinosaur fossils? Are they looking for bones protruding from the ground, or what is it that they're likely to find out there in Denali?
Well, you raise a really good point in that one of the beauties of paleontology is that you don't have to be overly educated, shall we call it, to make really important discoveries. The key to it is, and this ties to your question, is what you need are people that are curious and observant. And that's what, as you mentioned, you referenced the 2 educators, and that as a public museum, we constantly have people that are out there looking around, curious about the things they might find in creek beds and so on, bringing it into the museum for identification. So if someone were to come to the park, they would bring a framework of observations that they've already had. If they've had a pet, They know what a dog's footprint looks like in the mud. And they would be looking, all the finds that we have here have all been footprints so far, except for the plants. You know, the plants are carbonized remains. We don't have dinosaur bones here, but that's okay because the dinosaur bones from other parts of the state, they might tell you who was at the dance, but these footprints tell you what the dance was. And so that's the actual interaction between an organism and its environment. So we get great amount of information from studying footprints. So if somebody were to come out here and say, how do I go find a footprint? You really would start by thinking about what you've seen when you're out in the woods looking at modern animals.
This brings up a good point. You know, you can walk through Denali today, and if you're lucky, you might find a footprint of a grizzly bear in the mud, or a wolf, you know, along the roadside even. Today, Denali is a fairly cold and inhospitable place in many ways, and our summer season, when people want to visit, is about 100 days long, and the rest of the year is, it's pretty hard to imagine dinosaurs living here, frankly. Tell me about the climate and landscape of the late Cretaceous period when we know dinosaurs lived here in Denali.
Well, and that goes back to the point of why is this important, because it's breaking the stereotypes. That is the big question. What were they doing here? The climate here was, based on a number of factors, was warmer than it is today. What do I mean by that? It means the mean annual temperature in Denali some 70 million years ago was more like the southern boundary of Canada with the lower 48. And so it still could get cool, but definitely warmer than it is now. But that seasonality, that transition from long light, long periods of dark, that was still in place. And so what were these dinosaurs doing during those winter times? And that's one of the big burning questions of the program.
So you're saying that the summers were probably a bit warmer than now, but in particular the winters were warmer, and maybe were they wetter winters?
Correct.
Yeah. What about the sunlight? You know, everyone's fascinated. They come to Denali and they can't sleep because the sun never sets in June. And even now, we had some bug researchers here from Arkansas, and they were saying, we can't sleep. And everyone else is saying, well, it's finally getting dark. What are you talking about? Tell me about the light situation. You mentioned that Alaska latitudinally was in a similar location 70 million years ago to where it is today, but would you have expected the light to be similar to how it is today?
Yes, I think the light regime was exactly, and it's a function of latitude, in that we're close to the latitude we were 70 million years ago, and with the Earth presumably round 70 million years ago, that there is these long windows of light and long windows of dark. And actually, we actually see some adaptation to that in the animals. You mentioned Troodon and Nanoxaurus. Those are two fabulous examples. And the adaptation to light that Troodon had was it has the largest eye orbit to body size of any dinosaur out there. And others have argued it's very rare elsewhere. And if you think about owls and hawks, owls are active at night, hawks are active during the day, and yet they serve the same role in an ecosystem. And what's the big difference? One has big eyes, one has little eyes. And so some people argue that Troodon was adapted for low light conditions. And when you look at the number of Troodon fossils compared to other meat-eating dinosaurs in Alaska, you see that it's very, very common. And as a result of that, we argued that this was an adaptation to this light regime, that once it came to Alaska, it really liked Alaska, and it just stayed and basically became the dominant predator.
Fascinating. I want to hear more about the Troodon, but I'm noticing that we're running short on time, and we did get a question from our audience. This member of our audience was curious, have tracks of species that were portrayed in the movie Walking with Dinosaurs, which I believe came out last December and was quite popular, Did the animals that were portrayed in that movie live in Denali 70 million years ago?
As best we know, yes. And it's because we know that the rocks in Denali are about the same age as the rocks where those bones came from, which gave us the horned dinosaur star of that movie, as well as a few other things. So we tend to think of those dinosaurs as being present in Denali, and the storyline for that movie actually was developed a few years ago. As you know, movie schedules are what they are. And my contribution to it was by using my cell phone to talk to the BBC in London about what that storyline might look like. So that movie, those dinosaurs were not only in that movie, but some of the migration that they went through in the film is based on the work we did here in the park.
Wow, so the actual storyline in some ways was conceived in Denali, even though the movie didn't actually take place specifically in Denali.
Exactly.
They were more coastal, right?
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, one more question for you. I know we're running out of time, but I expect there are probably some future researchers out there who are curious about why they should become paleontologists, and what do you think are the best reasons to become a paleontologist and study Alaskan dinosaurs? What are the next big questions that you think are unanswered still?
Well, I think that people should follow their passion, and in my case, my passion was paleontology. I'm of the opinion that we're worried about where the world is going, and we can't know that until we know where we came from. And there's only one record of life on this planet, and it's paleontology. And it's the fossil record, and the study of that is paleontology. So if you're at all interested in knowing how we got to where we are and where we might be going, I think that's the value of paleontology.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Again, this is Dr. Tony Fiorillo joining us from the Perot Museum of Science and Nature in Dallas, Texas. I'm Sierra McLean. We're at the Murie Science and Learning Center in Denali National Park and Preserve. You can join us here tomorrow. There's going to be another live stream event featuring one of our artists in residence, in fact, a writer in residence, at 2 o'clock Alaska time. Hope to see you then.